Shelby, let's get England back on, lad. Let's get back to the UK.
Crazy baby boy Paddy Pimblett. They call him crazy. They call him unprofessional. They call him overrated. But one thing is undeniable. When Paddy Pimblett walks into the arena, the world watches. The hair, the walk, the smile that looks like he's already won. This isn't just a fighter. This is a phenomenon. This is the story of crazy baby boy Paddy Pimblett, and it's far deeper than knockouts and submissions. A kid from Liverpool. Liverpool is not a city that gives you anything for free. It's loud, it's proud, and it's unforgiving. Paddy Pimblett grew up surrounded by pressure, not the glamorous kind, the kind that forges toughness. He wasn't born into privilege. He wasn't handed opportunity. Like many kids in Liverpool, Paddy needed an outlet, somewhere to put the anger, the energy, the restlessness. That outlet became fighting. At a young age, he stepped into a gym for the first time. No cameras, no hype, just sweat, bruises, and hard lessons. And from the very beginning, something was different. He didn't just want to win, he wanted to dominate. The birth of the BADDY. As Paddy climbed the regional MMA scene, people noticed two things. First, he was fearless. Second, he didn't care what anyone thought. The haircut became a statement. The attitude became a weapon. While other fighters tried to look intimidating, Paddy looked like he was having fun, laughing, dancing, talking trash. But behind the smile was a serious competitor. He won fights aggressively. He finished opponents. And slowly, his name started spreading. Not just as a fighter, but as a character. Entering the UFC spotlight. When Paddy Pimblett signed with the UFC, expectations were mixed. Some fans were excited, others were skeptical. Critics said he was sloppy, that his defense was reckless, that his style wouldn't work at the highest level. And then came his UFC debut. The walkout alone was chaos. The crowd roared, the energy exploded. And when the fight ended in a spectacular finish, the message was clear. Paddy Pimblett had arrived. Overnight, he wasn't just a fighter anymore. He was a star, the crazy baby boy image. But with fame came criticism. Fans mocked his post-fight weight gain. Media questioned his discipline. Other fighters doubted his skills. The nickname Crazy stuck for a reason. Paddy would balloon in weight between fights, then somehow cut it all back down. Experts warned it was dangerous. Fans argued endlessly online. But Paddy didn't hide from it. He embraced it. The more people doubted him, the louder he became. He joked. He smiled. He leaned into the chaos. Because Paddy understood something many fighters don't. Attention is power. The skill nobody talks about. Paddy Pimblett and weight cutting. Most fighters are judged by what they do inside the octagon. But with Paddy Pimblett, one of his most controversial and misunderstood abilities happens before the fight even begins. Weight cutting. For many fighters, weight cutting is a nightmare. A dangerous, exhausting process that drains their body and mind. For Paddy Pimblett, it's controlled chaos. Between fights, Paddy is known for gaining massive amounts of weight, sometimes shocking amounts. Fans see the pictures, critics shake their heads, experts call it irresponsible. But what they miss is this: Paddy knows exactly how his body responds. He has done this cycle repeatedly for years, bulking up, then stripping the weight off with brutal precision. While most fighters panic during fight week, Paddy stays calm because he's already been there. He understands water manipulation. He understands sodium balance. He understands how to dehydrate without breaking himself. On the scales, he looks drained, like everyone else. But once the weight is made, something changes. After rehydration, Paddy often walks into the cage significantly heavier than his opponent, stronger, physically imposing. It's not an accident, it's strategy. Weight cutting, for Paddy, is not just about making the limit. It's about maximizing the size advantage without sacrificing performance. Of course, it's risky. Many fighters destroy their cardio, their chin, and their health trying to copy it. That's why this is not a skill everyone can use. But for Paddy Pimblett, it has become part of his identity. A weapon before the fight, a psychological edge over his opponent, and a reason his fights feel chaotic, physical, and overwhelming. Love it or hate it, this is one of the reasons Crazy Baby Boy is so dangerous. The controversy. Is Paddy Pimblett's weight cutting a ticking time bomb? Not everyone sees Paddy Pimblett's weight cutting as a skill. To many critics, it's a disaster waiting to happen. They point to the science. Extreme weight fluctuations stress the heart. Severe dehydration affects reaction time. Repeated cuts can damage the brain and kidneys. Doctors warn that no fighter is immune, no matter how experienced. And history backs them up. We've seen fighters with legendary weight cuts suddenly collapse. Cardio vanish, chins crack. Critics argue that Paddy isn't mastering weight cutting. He's gambling with it. They say his performances rely too heavily on physical size, not technical dominance, and that one day the body will refuse to cooperate. The reality check. But here's the other side of the argument. Paddy Pimblett has not missed weight at the UFC level. He consistently makes the limit. He consistently performs. That matters. Weight cutting only becomes a failure when it affects fight night. And so far, Paddy's explosiveness, aggression, and finishing ability remain intact. Supporters argue that critics confuse unusual with ineffective. Just because his method looks extreme doesn't mean it lacks control. In fact, Paddy has spoken openly about working with nutritionists and professionals. This isn't blind chaos, it's calculated risk. Style versus sustainability. The real debate isn't whether his weight cutting works. It does, right now. The real question is sustainability. Can this method hold up against elite disciplined lightweights? Can it survive 5-round wars? Can it endure over a long UFC career? That's where doubt lives. And that's where Paddy's future will be decided. Why this controversy makes him dangerous. Here's the truth most people miss. Controversy creates pressure. Pressure breaks some fighters. Others evolve. If Paddy learns to control his weight without losing his size advantage, he becomes more than a star. He becomes a serious threat. But if he doesn't adapt, the very skill that gave him an edge could become his downfall. Final thought. So is Paddy Pimblett a master of weight cutting? Or is he standing on the edge of a cliff? That question, that uncertainty, is what makes every one of his fights must watch. Because when Crazy Baby Boy steps on the scale, the fight has already begun. Inside the octagon. When the cage door closes, the jokes disappear. Inside the octagon, Paddy Pimblett is ruthless. His fighting style is aggressive, submission-hungry, relentless. He pushes forward even when he's hit, even when he's tired, even when logic says to slow down. Why? Because Paddy doesn't fight to survive. He fights to break opponents. And that unpredictability makes him dangerous. You never know what he's going to do next. Neither do his opponents. Mental health and the real Paddy. Behind the wild image is a man who's been honest about his struggles. Paddy Pimblett has spoken openly about depression, about losing close friends, about dark moments away from the spotlight. Moments where winning fights didn't matter. Instead of hiding it, he talked about it. On live microphones, in interviews, in front of millions. He told fans that no amount of money or fame fixes your mind. That asking for help is strength. And for many people watching, that message mattered more than any knockout. Loved and hated. Few fighters divide fans like Paddy Pimblett. Some see him as the future of the UFC. Others see hype waiting to collapse. Some admire his confidence. Others call it arrogance. But history shows one thing clearly. The most memorable fighters are never neutral. They force reactions. And Paddy forces them every single time. Love him or hate him, you're watching. The future of Crazy Baby Boy. So what happens next? Will Paddy Pimblett rise into championship contention? Will the chaos catch up to him? And that's exactly why he's must-watch TV. Because Paddy Pimblett doesn't follow scripts, he writes his own. Legacy in the making. Crazy, unpredictable, unapologetic. Paddy Pimblett is not trying to be perfect. He's trying to be remembered. And whether his story ends with gold around his waist or controversy in his wake, one thing is certain. Crazy Baby Boy Paddy Pimblett changed the game.